Hello and welcome back to my garden. Today we're in the rose garden and the title is going to be pretty self-explanatory, I think, as to what we're doing today. But I thought I'd just take a moment here and try to get up some of these weeds here. And some of this stuff has formed into mats, which is not good. But if I stay at this with my Dutch hoe here, I should be able to get quite a bit of it up. And over the winter time, I think I'll add a little more compost to this space. I'll be doing some other pruning and tweaking jobs here, and probably early spring in preparation for next year. What I hope to also do next year is start on the next section of the rose garden, which will be the other half of the front that's currently covered by black weed fabric. But today I thought I would take a moment and get my roses sort of under control. Some of them have gotten a bit gangly, and I think now is going to be a good time, as they're pretty dormant, to get in there, clear out a lot of the branches which are crisscrossing and tangled, and thin out the growth, chop them down for the winter. And this way when the springtime comes, they can just take off and do their thing, and hopefully by, I don't know, April, May-ish maybe, I can enjoy some beautiful roses. But right now they're all looking pretty rough. And let me show you what I mean. So here's my David Austin rose. I did some pruning on it earlier in the year. I can't remember exactly when, but it was, the lower branches seem to have been dying off or just not growing correctly. What happened was I basically got growth from here up, and everything down below stayed pretty dead, dormant. So I had this like weird top growth, but everything below was Kaputski. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go pretty hardcore, and I'm going to take it probably to within a foot of the ground, hoping that next year new buds will form and I will get a fuller looking bush. That's my theory. This is what I'm going with. This is my Olivia Rose Austin bush, and it has done wonderfully. Unfortunately, at some point earlier this year, I think it was late summer, the deer got in, took off some of the bottom vegetation, and again I had this top growth. And like many rose bushes, you get these long sort of canes here that are just running amok, running off into wherever they're running to. So this one I want to trim down, but this bush wasn't the worst when it came to deer damage. Let me show you. Right here I have Desdemona and Litchfield Angel. At some point the deer really got in here and did a number on these two bushes, and they look dead, but they're not. They just got really beaten up by the deer, and they are coming back, or trying to come back. There's buds all over the place I can see. And they hit this one over here too a little bit, which is Emily Bronte. This one's Emily Bronte, and this one has been sort of growing a little more columnar, growing like a column this year. And as you can see, it also too has put on this crazy long new cane, so that's got to go. And then I have 3 Earth Angel roses in the front of the garden here, which will also get an extreme cut back this year, because one of them started basically pulling out of the ground due to winds, and it got very top heavy, and then the deer hit them as well. And hopefully I'll show you guys that later on in this video. But for now, let's start some pruning and hopefully get some of these rose bushes back under control. I have 2 different types of gloves I'll be using today, and honestly, if you've never grown or if you've never pruned roses, you pick the tools that work best for you. When certain jobs where I don't have to reach into certain areas, I will wear my shorter gloves, and other areas, and you'll definitely see me wearing this with some of the other bushes today, I'll be wearing my more protective sleeve rose cutting gloves here. This way, as I'm sticking my arm into a bush, I don't want them getting snagged by a thorn. And hopefully, if I'm really lucky, I won't be doing any bleeding today. Right next to it here, you may have noticed, is Victoria Blue Salvia. And this is held up pretty well to multiple freezes. And I see some newish undergrowth to it. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is leave the top growth here. It'll help protect the plant overall, hopefully this winter. Then maybe in the spring, I'll just give it a nice cut back and let everything reflush. I mentioned earlier this year, I really do like the Victoria Salvia. Victory Salvia. I think that's called Victory Salvia. But it is marked as a tender perennial. So I think it's tender perennial or hardy annual. Either way, it may not survive the winter. We will have to wait and see. In the meantime, this has got to go. That's a long cane. There is some buds that are at various stages up here, but I want the plant to flush from the bottom. I don't want all this top growth. Now, I'm no expert on pruning roses, so if you see me doing something horrifically wrong, please leave those comments below. But it's been my experience that you can pretty much go medieval on a rose bush, and as long as the roots are solid, it will come back. This is just my experience. And it does pain me somewhat as I prune here, because I do see quite a few new buds, and I'm looking for buds on the main stem here. There's a lot of thorns here. Mr. Lincoln is a thorny guy here. This really does pain me. There are some beautiful branches on here with some buds, but again, I'll wind up with all of the top growth and nothing below. So here's Mr. Lincoln cut back. It's about a foot. I'm going to clean up these weeds right now real quick, and then I'm going to put down some more compost around this area here, and then I'll throw in a little mulch, I think, later on. Now, I have read on the interwebs where this really should be done in late winter, early spring, but I have the opportunity now. It's a nice day, so I thought I would get in here and do this. So the mulch I'm putting down today, and I'm just using pine bark because I have found over time that this is what works for me. Everybody's a little different. I've tried hardwood mulches, which do not work for me because they get compacted, and then once that happens, clover grows right on top of it, through it. It's crazy. But the pine bark works for me because it's loose enough that the clover can't grow on top of it. It may grow from up underneath it, but not from on top of it. So really what I'm doing today is just a layer of mulch to suppress what little weeds I can, but also to help retain the soil and the moisture. Help retain the moisture in the soil. This year we've been pretty dry overall, and we're going into this winter now, and they're also talking about it being fairly dry. Not that much moisture. So the more moisture I can retain in the soil, the better for the plants for the long term, because I'm not going to be out here in the winter time when it's 40 degrees during the day and 32 at night or lower and watering these plants. That's not actually going to be beneficial to the plants, in my opinion. I don't think so. If you think I'm wrong, please leave those comments below. If you have your own opinions, again, please leave those comments below. Love to hear from you guys. In the meantime, let's go prune something we're not going to be quite as drastic with. I've got my big gloves on now, as you can see, and I'm going to start pruning this guy now. This one, I'm not going to trim back as harshly as the Mr. Lincoln, but I am going to do some pruning here. I'm going to try to be more selective here and take this back to buds wherever I see a bud. Sometimes I'm just going to take a little, sometimes a little more, but I'm going to reduce this plant at least by half. The other thing I'm going to do as I'm going through this is I'm looking for dead, diseased, or damaged branches. If you've grown roses before, many of you who watch this have gardening experience, so please let me know your thoughts and comments below. But for those of you who haven't, it is my understanding that you want to remove any dead, diseased, damaged, also branches that are crisscrossing. And the reason being is because they'll start to rub against one another. They'll create a sore spot. And especially with roses, I feel, you're inviting at that point the possibility of a fungal issue, because roses are prone to fungal issues. They're also prone to various other diseases. Whereas I said before, they are hardy, and they are hardy. I could prune this thing pretty much right back to the stump, and I believe it'll regrow. But if, again, you have those branches that are rubbing together and create those weak spots or those sore spots, then you're going to have a problem. And the other thing I like to do, and maybe it's just me, but I like to remove branches that are facing inwards. Those are probably the easiest ones to identify as branches that'll be crisscrossing, and I don't want that. I want branches to move outwards. Either you got to go or you got to go. One of you two got to go. And sometimes the branches may not be touching or crisscrossing up top, but they are maybe at the base, and that's also another thing that I try to keep an eye out for. And I think at this point, this is just part where you just have to be patient and have patience. Let's see if I can reach in here. See, now I have to reach into the heart of the plant here, as it were, and this is where I'm worried about getting bitten here by the rose bush. I can just get my pruner in there. Oh, yep, come on. There we go. Ow! So this whole big thing just came out because at the base, two branches were touching. So if they're touching at the base and they start moving back and forth again, you may develop that weak spot. And being at the base when the rose bush is at full bloom, it's pretty shady. So cooler, shady, dry space to me just spells disaster when it comes to fungal issues or diseases. I have watched YouTubers who prune roses with their bare hands, and to me that's just crazy. But I guess they've gotten enough experience and skill that it doesn't bother them anymore, or they have a high threshold for pain. The other thing I'm trying to do as I'm clipping away here is I'm looking at the whole shape of the plant, because if I'm not going to prune it all the way down to the ground, I want to try to keep it into a certain shape for next year, so when it does start growing, it maintains that certain shape. The plant is reduced. I removed quite a bit of the branches that were facing inwards, that were rubbing against one another. If I stared at this plant longer, I'd probably find a few more that I may want to removing, and who knows, maybe in the springtime I will. I brought it down to, I think, a good height. We're about 1.5 feet, 2 foot. And I see a lot of new buds. So hopefully this year, which one is this? This is Olivia Rose Austin, which is one of my favorite roses here, aside from Mr. Lincoln. I'll always have a spot for Mr. Lincoln, my first rose. Anyways, Olivia Rose Austin here. I think I've pruned it back really well. Again, the plant is relatively dormant because it's been so cold recently. And yeah, that's that one. 7 more to go. So let me get cracking.
Many unbearable hours later.
Sorry, I'm out of breath here. For the past couple hours after I turned the camera off, I've been working on pruning all of these roses back. And as you can see, they are very reduced in height. And afterwards, I did the same thing as I did with the Mr. Lincoln and the Olivia Austin Rose, where I put a layer of compost around the base and then I mulched. And I'm not sure if it's in shot here, but I have a hibiscus which really needs to come out this year. But that's gonna be a project for another day, because there's several other shrubs and plants that I do want to take out of the ground now in the winter before the springtime. I want to get them while they're dormant, because they're either in the wrong location, such as this hibiscus, which is absolutely beautiful, but it's blocking some of the roses, and honestly, it should be a background plant, not a foreground plant. But that's got to come out. And I have a bunch of other shrubs which the deer like to tend to graze on, which I really want to get out of the ground. And I think I'm going to move them eventually here into the rose garden. And when I do those projects, I will bring you guys along for that and explain my thinking and reasoning as to who, what, when, where, why, and how. If you think all of this looks absolutely horrible, the fact that I've trimmed these back so far, let me know in the comments below. Should I have done something differently? I'm thinking that now is the time to do it while it's cool. Nonetheless, I don't think any of this can hurt right now. I've made a good start of it. I've run out of energy and steam. I still have my Earth Angel roses to do. I still have quite a bit of weeding to do here in the rose garden, which I'm not going to bore you guys with. You could see I've actually been doing some weeding as I've been moving along here in the last few hours, and adding more compost and adding more mulch. And I'm also noticing that there's quite a few larger bare spots. So I think this upcoming year, there's going to be a lot more salvia added to this rose garden. I still have alliums to plant out, which I'm thinking alliums may look lovely in here. So I will try to get some more alliums into this garden. There are apparently alliums planted here, but I don't know if they survived last winter / this year. If you haven't been to my website, please go check my website, growinggreenfinger.com. I'm going to be doing some major updates to that this year. If there's any suggestions or things you'd like to see on the website, please let me know in the comments below. I think that's going to be about it for today because I am pooped. And I think lunch is on order, and then maybe a heating pad for my back. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.